So hello there and welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spy Knight, and in these podcasts I like talking all things movies and TV and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast I'm talking about my thoughts and feelings on The Wild Robot after I got a chance to see it for the second time. Finally. So let's get into it, shall we? The Wild Robot, thoughts and feelings, second time around. And was it as good the second time around? That's the question I'm going to answer in this podcast and in this review today. So, if you follow this channel, and if you don't, you should, by the way, do like and subscribe down below. But if you don't follow this channel, or if you do follow this channel, should I say, a couple of months ago now, I did a review for this film alongside my reviews of Emilia Perez and A Real Pain in Scotland. I recorded my review for this film in Scotland because I just gone to Scotland after being at the BFI Film Festival, where I was at the UK premiere for this film. I was at the UK premiere for The Wild Robot, and at the premiere I saw the likes of Lupita Nyong'o, who voices the main robot in this film called Roz. I saw Pedro Pascal, who voiced a fox in this film called Fink. And I saw Bill Nighy at the premiere, who voices an old wise goose in this film as well, alongside the director of the film, who was Chris Sanders. And if you don't know who Chris Sanders is, he has worked on many animated films in the past, including the original Lilo and Stitch, which I still haven't seen. I know the remake is coming out next year. I ought to watch that at some point over the next year because, you know, the remake is coming out. But also he co-directed the first How to Train Your Dragon. And by the way, side note here, that trailer for the new How to Train Your Dragon remake looks spectacular. I cannot wait to see that film next summer. I think it's coming out in the summer of next year. But anyway, get the point I'm making. I love the trailer for the new How to Train Your Dragon live action remake. And the first How to Train Your Dragon, the first of the animated How to Train Your Dragon movies, was co-directed by Chris Sanders, who also solely directed this film. And watching this film at the cinema again yesterday, that made a lot of sense, knowing that fact that it was done by the same director. And if you don't know already, this is a new film from DreamWorks. I say new, it came out about a month ago now, properly in the cinema, but I was hoping to watch it much sooner. I was hoping to rewatch it after seeing it at the BFI London Film Festival much sooner than I ended up doing. But since I've been at the BFI London Film Festival, since I've come back from my travels, which were a couple of months ago, I have been watching quite a bit of movies, been trying to catch up on so many films, and some films I haven't even caught up on. Like, I didn't get to see the new Hugh Grant film Heretic, and I really wanted to see that, but that's because there's so many films at the moment that I want to check out, and there's so many which just aren't at my local cinema. But that's a tangent for another day. I'm not going to get into that now. But I just haven't found the time to check out The Wild Robot again in the cinema until yesterday. Yesterday I realised, actually, you know what? I'm pretty much caught up on all the films I need to see at the cinema. Let's see if there's a showing of The Wild Robot anywhere. I had to travel about 90 minutes to get to this screening, but I'm super glad that I did, because I wanted to know whether this film would work for me the second time, whether I'd like it more, whether I'd like it less, because the first time I saw it, I absolutely adored it, but I watched it in a cinema full of all these people. I mean, it wasn't really a cinema, it was this big hall. It was the Royal Festival Hall at the BFI London Film Festival. Huge, like ginormous hall. And watching it with a big crowd can sometimes change your opinion on the film, because when you're watching with other people, when you're sharing the experience, it can sometimes make you feel the same way when you don't necessarily do so. You know what I mean? And I was wondering if my viewing experience watching The Wild Robot was affected by the fact that I was watching it with all these other people who were clearly loving the movie as well. So I wanted to rewatch the movie by myself and still see if I had those same thoughts and those same feelings watching the film the second time, or to see if I was going to actually dislike the film anymore, or see if I'm going to like the film even more. You know what I mean? Hopefully you do. I'm not on top form today. I am really struggling right now, but I want to record this review because I want to talk about this film, because after watching it a second time, I am so happy to report that I liked it so much more than I did the first time. The point that I loved it so much more than I did the first time. And I do think this is one of the best films of the year now. I think this is one of the best animated films I've seen over the past however many years. And that's not me, that's not hyperbole, that's not me over-exaggerating. I genuinely think this is one of the best animated movies to come out of the past decade, because the animation in this film is so visually gorgeous and engaging. Every frame of this film looks like it's had this careful attention and energy put into it. I'm not usually impressed by animated movies. I'm not usually impressed by the animation in animated movies, should I say. In animated movies which are all done via computers. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not usually impressed by Pixar animation because, yes, their films are very good, but the animation in the films themselves doesn't always impress me. Usually I'm impressed by animation from the likes of Aardman, or from the likes of Tim Burton animated movies, like, say, The Nightmare Before Christmas, which he didn't direct, but, he produced, and it was under his production company, his animation company. I'm impressed by stop motion animation. I mean, just look at the t-shirt I'm wearing in this podcast today. I've got Feathers McGraw, my t-shirt, from Wallace and Gromit, The Wrong Trousers, and he's coming back in a new Wallace and Gromit film this Christmas. And I love Wallace and Gromit, The Wrong Trousers. I love all the Wallace and Gromit films. I love all the Aardman movies. The Aardman Studio is the studio behind the Wallace and Gromit films, because of the stop motion animation, the blood, sweat and tears that must go into that style of animation just blows my mind. The amount of time it must take to make an Aardman movie, again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, blows my mind. And I was sat there watching The Wild Robot for the second time, and my mind was being blown all over again like it was the first time. And I wasn't watching it in a full cinema. It wasn't like I was having this shared experience all over again. I was the only person in my cinema watching this film, which was a bit disappointing, because the movie only came out a month ago. But then again, quite a few movies have opened since this film first opened at the cinema. But you understand the point I'm making. I wasn't having that same shared experience I was having the first time with everybody else. I was by myself in the cinema, and yet the film was still working for me on so many levels, whether it's the way it explores all these themes, whether it's the way the film explores all these themes of otherness, themes of found family, and themes of uniting together in the worst of times, and the way those themes are intertwined into the narrative of the film are so seamless. They don't feel forced, they don't feel spoon-fed. Like, I watched Red One, was it last week now? Feels like I watched that film a lot longer ago, but I watched Red One about a week ago, and that's got a bunch of themes in there, but they just feel all spoon-fed. It's like, oh, it's annoying. It's got a bunch of messages in there which feel forced, But in this film, there are a lot of messages. It's a family movie. It's a kids film. I mean, I hate using the word kids film, but it's a film primarily aimed at kids. It's a family movie, and yet it's got all these messages and themes in there, but they don't feel forced. And I'm going to close my curtains because the sun is beaming down on me right now. It's got all these themes in there, but they're so beautifully intertwined into the movie, and they don't feel forced and explored in such a way that is emotional and and is compelling at the same time. And these themes that the film explores and these messages that the film gives, they sort of hit you without you realising it. I loved that about the movie. Plus, the second time around, I couldn't believe how much I was still attached to these characters. The first time around, I felt attached to the characters, for sure. But the second time around, I felt attached to the characters even more so. I really got attached to this to the main robot Roz. And the first time around, I wasn't as attached to that character. I was more attached to the other characters, like Bright Bill, who's the main goose, the main bird you follow in the film, and Fink. I was more attached to those two characters than Roz. But this time around, I found myself really caring about Roz far more than I did the first time. I don't know how that works. But the other thing which really impressed me about Roz was that is a character voiced by Lupita Nyong'o, who's quite a prolific actress. She's been in quite a few things now, just this year. She was in A Quiet Place Day One, the newish A Quiet Place prequel. But if you didn't know it was Lupita Nyong'o voicing that character, I don't think you would realise, because she voices the robot so well. And I remember at the premiere, because she came out on stage at the London premiere for this film, and she was talking about how she sort of embodied this character, how she went into voicing this character, and how she took inspiration from AI voices like Siri and like Alexa. And you can tell that when you watch the film. It sounds like an AI voice, but it's not. And I loved that about it. I actually really liked how Lupita Nyong'o played this character, and I do think it is a performance. I don't just think it's a voice performance. I think she really throws herself into voicing this character. So it is, yes, it's a voice performance, but it's not just a voice performance. Hopefully you understand what I mean then. I loved that character so much more the second time around. Plus, I loved Fink, the fox, voiced by Pedro Pascal, the Mandalorian himself, so much more the second time around. God, I love that character. I love how we meet that character, and he doesn't really say anything to us for like the first 5 minutes after meeting him. And on the topic of, how we are introduced to things in the film, the first 10 minutes of this film accomplishes so much. I mean, the first 10 to 15 minutes of this film accomplishes so much. You learn about Roz's circumstance. You learn how all these animals are reacting to Roz the robot, as I keep calling her. And there was so much you were told about this character, and so much you were told about the setting in the first 10 to 15 minutes of the film, but there was really not that much dialogue. There is dialogue, but there's not that much dialogue, and that's one of the age-old adages of film. Show, don't tell. Don't tell your audience what is happening in this scene. Show them where this character's at, show them what this character's circumstances are, and be able to convey that without dialogue, or with as little dialogue as possible. And this film does that remarkably well within the first 10 to 15 minutes. Plus, within the first 10 to 15 minutes, there's all this setup for payoff later in the film, and you don't even realise it. And I love that. It is such a tightly written film. It's one of the best written animated movies I've seen in quite a bit of time. We watched it in the cinema yesterday. It actually reminded me of whenever I rewatch, should I say, Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. I think Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit might be the best animated movie ever made because of how well it is written. I mean, there are many reasons. In my opinion, the best animated movie ever made. But I think one of the big reasons is because of the writing. It is such a tightly written film, and there are sets up in that film that you don't even realise is going to be paid off until the end of the film. It's only like 89 minutes long, and it flies by, and it's just perfect in my opinion. And although I don't think The Wild Robot is perfect, the fact that it reminded me of Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which I think is the best full-length feature animated movie of all time, tells you how good and how much I was enjoying my experience rewatching The Wild Robot. It's such a tightly written script, again, with setup that you don't even realise is going to have payoff later on. And I was watching this film yesterday, and I briefly mentioned this earlier in this review. I was watching this film yesterday, and I was like, yeah, I can tell this is from the same guy who co-directed the first How to Train Your Dragon, because the first How to Train Your Dragon is also one of my all-time favourite animated films. I love that film so much. It was a great surprise. I put off watching that film for the longest time, and then I finally sat down to watch it, and I just remember absolutely falling in love with it. And I love the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy as a whole, but particularly the first film I think is really something special. And there's this very excellent sequence in that film where you see Hiccup and Toothless's flight for the first time, and you really feel like you're flying alongside those characters in that scene in the first How to Train Your Dragon. And in this film, you feel like you're flying alongside the characters when you see Bright Bill, the main bird that you're following, fly properly for the first time, and when you see Rose helping him fly, it's like, oh wow, I feel like I'm flying with these characters, even though this is a completely animated world, animated environment, and this film isn't reality. I feel like I'm there with these characters, and I love when animated films make you feel like you're there as well, because animation is just, I mean, it's not real, is it? But at the same time, the best animated films can feel real, whether it's in the animation or whether it's in the way they make you feel. And the flight sequence, when you hear the song Kiss the Sky, you just might kiss the sky. I mean, I can't sing to save my life, but if you've seen the film, during the flight sequence where you see Bright Bill fly probably for the first time, the song Kiss the Sky is soaring in the background. And you hear that song in the trailer for this film as well. I think it's in the official trailer. When you see that flight sequence happen and the song plays in the background, it's just spectacular. And it's one of my favourite sequences in film in this year. Yeah, one of my favourite sequences of film 2024, it really is. And that sequence brought back those same feelings I had watching the first How to Train Your Dragon for the first time. And I was like, oh yeah, that's because it's, directed by the same guy, So that made complete sense. And the first time I watched this film, my big problem with it, even so I gave the film like a 9 out of 10, my problem with the film the first time was that the ending didn't feel complete to me. It felt like it was setting up a sequel. And while I do think there is part of the ending which sets up a sequel, I'm not going to give away what in case people haven't seen the film. It might be one of those films which I think is going to really hit on streaming when it comes out on streaming, probably within the next month, because of how quickly films go into streaming nowadays. It's ridiculous. But that's a tangent for another day. This is a spoiler-free review, so I'm not going to spoil how the ending of this film sets up a sequel. But at the same time, the first time around that bothered me. The first time around I was like, oh, I don't love the ending. Second time around I loved it. Whether it's because I knew where the film was heading, I knew how the film was going to conclude, or whether it was just because I didn't care about the setup for a sequel so much, because I do think it is a complete story. I don't know what was going on about the first time. I think this film ends with a conclusion to this story. Yes, it does leave some room open for Chapter 2, Part 2, and I know that the Wild Robot 2 is already in the works. But if the Wild Robot 2 doesn't happen, and there is a possibility that it doesn't, if it doesn't, then the story is complete. And I loved watching these characters all over again. I think all the animals in this film are absolutely wonderful. I love all the themes explored in the movie because they don't feel forced, they don't feel spoon-fed, they feel beautifully intertwined into the film. And I love the musical score by Chris Bowers. That really stuck out to me the second time around. I mean, the music in general in this film is great. The song Kiss the Sky is a really great song that I have been listening to on Spotify quite a few times over the past couple of months since I first saw this film. But the musical score itself as well, again, it brought back those same feelings that I had watching the first How to Train Your Dragon, and John Powell's score for that film, which I think is phenomenal. And I do think the score by Chris Bowers for the film is also phenomenal. The comedy was just as hilarious, and I think is really well written. I think the whole film is excellently and so tightly written, and I love that about it. And yeah, sure, it's predictable at times, and you can see where it's going, and if you really want to, you could sit there and probably pick holes with the film, but I'm not going to, just because I loved this film so much. I really did. I loved all the characters, I loved all the voice acting. I don't usually say that about animated movies, because voice acting can be a bit off-putting, like, okay, who's that doing the voice of that? But I couldn't tell when I was watching the film. So much to the point that the first time I watched this film, I didn't even know it was Mark Hamill, and I love Mark Hamill. He played Luke Skywalker. But I didn't even realise that Luke Skywalker was voicing the bear in this film. I didn't even realise it was Pedro Pascal voicing think, one of the main characters in this film the first time around. And I realised that going in the second time around, I knew that these actors were voicing these characters, but it wasn't easily noticeable the second time around still. I think the only time it was a little noticeable was with Matt Berry voicing this Beaver, but even that I didn't care about, because I've loved Matt Berry ever since I saw him in IT Crowd. I think he's absolutely hilarious, and him voicing this Beaver, I think the casting of that is a stroke of genius, you know? God, I love the voice cast for this film. I love the animation. It's visually gorgeous and visually engaging in the way you want it to be, and this is a properly great family movie. It's not just a kids film. I hate the phrase kids film. No, the best so-called quote-unquote kids movies are family films. Are great family films. You know, films are the whole family can sit around and each member of the family, gets something out of the film. And I do truly feel like The Wild Robot is one of those films which each member of the family can get something out of. I think this is the best animated film of the year, and that's in the same year that Inside Out 2's come out, and I thought Inside Out 2 was great, but I think this is a better movie, and I love it. I love how you go on a journey in this film. I love animated films where you feel like you've been on a journey, and you truly feel like you've been on a journey in this movie with the characters, and you get so attached to them to the point that when this film comes out on streaming, I'm going to be rewatching it all over again just to look at the animation, because it's utterly magnificent. I mean, the whole film, it's an animated masterpiece. And in my opinion, it's also one of the films of 2024. One of the best films of 2024 at that. So, all in all, I'm going to say that The Wild Robot, I'm going to say that it's a 10 out of 10. Yep, no notes on me with this film. Rewatching it made me love it so much more than I did the first time. I mean, I loved it the first time, but the second time around, I was like, wow. Yep. So glad I rewatched it, and my opinion did change, but it changed for the better. The second time around, I love The Wild Robot. I think it's one of the films of 2024, and yeah, beautifully animated, a story that you get engaged with and you find compelling. It's a film which, makes you feel like you've been on a journey with these characters, and all in just the best way possible. I think it's an animated masterpiece, yeah, and one of the best animated movies to come out of the past decade, truly. And so, all in all, as I've already said, as I'm going to say once more in this podcast today, The Wild Robot is a 10 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen The Wild Robot, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Maybe you didn't feel similar to me, or maybe you felt similar to me. Whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast. And look forward to many more podcasts and many more videos coming very, very soon on this channel. Boy, do I need to lie down. So I'm going to round things off by saying once more, thank you so much for watching or listening to this podcast. And I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.